As your assets grow and you decide that you want to purchase another property, let me just give a quick example of buying a secondary home at the ocean. What do you need to know? When you buy that oceanfront property, it is very important to make sure what liability coverages you have. That is number one. Number two would be if you're purchasing a property near water, how close to the water, because you need to make sure that flood insurance, whether it's needed or not needed, you understand the difference. If it's needed and you do a mortgage, that means no matter what you do, you have to purchase flood insurance, which might be a good thing anyways. But the critical thing is to understand what your options are. Is it a necessity that you buy flood insurance? If it is, that cost you need to understand is going to be built in there. And number two, if it's not a necessity because you purchased the home and you paid cash for it, we need to look at the risk of losing that home due to water. There are ways that we can analyze that risk and show you the likelihood and the options on purchasing flood insurance if necessary. And if you so choose that you want to take that risk and you don't want the policy, that's up to you. The critical thing is you're going to make the decision. You have the right to say, no, I don't want that coverage. My job is to make sure that we've educated you on all the coverages and options that are out there. I just explained to you buying a secondary home that you're going to live in, but let's talk about you buying a secondary property that you're not going to live in. It is critically important that's not a homeowner's policy, because homeowners' policies are policies of properties that you purchased that you're going to live in. So if you bought a secondary home and you were going to have it as a secondary home, you're not going to rent it out. That is a secondary homeowner's policy. But if you buy a second property and you're going to rent it to others, that is a very different policy. And if you buy a homeowner's and rent it to somebody else, there is most likely going to be no coverage when you have a claim. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure you buy a fire dwelling policy. And that is a policy of a secondary home or a secondary property that you purchased that you're not going to live in, because that's going to carry different coverages. For example, when you buy a secondary property that you don't live in, the furniture and the property of the tenant that's bringing in is not your responsibility. So it's not going to be on your fire dwelling property. It's going to be on their renter's policy. The liability is very different on a fire dwelling than on your homeowners, because on a fire dwelling, they know and understand that you are renting to others, which is an additional liability risk. Recently, I had a prospect come to me who had a secondary property. And on that secondary property, they made a mistake. They purchased the secondary homeowner's policy. And what happened in the case of this claim is there ended up to be a broken pipe. While the claims adjuster was out analyzing the claim, they found out that the people were tenants of that property. They were not owner occupied. So that homeowner's policy only covers for homeowners, meaning if you own the property, you live in that property. In this specific case, they bought a homeowner's property that they were living in secondarily. They decided to rent it out. They never changed the policy. So during that claim, unfortunately, it had come back. The claims adjuster reported it back to the carrier, and the carrier denied the claim because that specific insured did not purchase the right policy, which would have been a policy that covered for rental, which is a fire dwelling policy. So making sure you have the right policy is critical to making sure that if you have a claim, that it is covered. What makes Paradiso Insurance different? Number one, we have an in-house claims liaison, whether it's personal lines or commercial. We want to make sure that if you have a claim, we are not only here for you, but we are helping the process speed along and making sure the communication with the claims adjuster at the carrier level and at your level is being taken care of. Why? Because bad communication turns into bad claims. Bad claims turn into more of a payout, bigger claims, lengthier times that you are probably not in your home, which really brings a lot of frustration. So number one thing is claims liaisons. We want to be there for you when you need your insurance. Number two, We are open on Saturdays. Why? Because we know it's vitally important that while you may not be at work, you may be purchasing an automobile, or you might be purchasing toys like a snowmobile, motorcycle, whatever it might be. We want to be here for you on Saturdays. And third, but not last, but not least, we want to make sure that you are dealing with a licensed insurance agent. We are licensed. Why? Because we need to be professional in understanding not only your coverages, but also your needs. So you are going to be dealing with a licensed professional at our agency. Those are three critical things of why you should do business with Paradiso Insurance.